Photography Online, the podcast.
Coming up on this month's podcast, we discuss the latest photography news stories, including how the world may be one step closer to solving one of history's most pressing questions following a recent gruesome discovery. We ask if a photograph is ever truly finished unless it's printed. We debate if there's any point to Aurora Photography, and we decide if the world really needs super tough SD cards and an £8,000 digital camera that doesn't even come with a screen.
And now, please welcome your hosts for this episode of the Photography Online podcast. A man whose only chance of making money in photography is to sell all his cameras. It's James McCormick.
Or my body, of course.
And a man who is so environmentally conscious, he uses his sleeve as his lens cloth. It's Harry Martin.
We've all got to do our bit.
And here to keep them both in check, it's Ruth Taylor.
Hey everybody, welcome to the November podcast. I am Ruth, host of the show. This month in the studio we have got James and Harry. Harry actually barely been home the past couple of months. You were in obviously last month, Harry, just back from Africa. You went straight off again. Where have you been recently? Because you're only just back again.
Well, yep, I was straight back from Africa, a couple of nights in my own bed, if that, and we have our annual trips to the Dolomites. So we jumped in the car, Marcus and I shared the drive, and we were there for 3 weeks or so. And just fantastic. And we had a lot of snow this year as well, which was just amazing to see. These are locations I've been to pretty much every year for 10 years now, and I've only seen some of them in snow once.
So, Harry, can I ask you a question, please?
Of course.
Did you get sunburnt? Because I was listening to last month's podcast where you said you're more likely to get sunburnt in Shetland than you are in southern Africa.
Well, I don't think I said more likely.
What about the Dolomites?
No, we didn't get sunburnt in the Dolomites. It was because it was cold and snowy. Last year we had 30 degrees Celsius heat and everybody was, just absolutely sweaty. It was so hot last year. And then this year, it was so hot last year, I was like, I won't take the really thick, trousers and thermals or anything like that. And for the whole week, it was about -5 Celsius and it was freezing cold. But yeah, beautiful, utterly beautiful.
So Ruth, are you going to ask me where I've been?
Well, I was considering whether it was going to be a nice thing to ask you or not, because you've not been anywhere particularly exciting, have you?
Don't you?
I'm sorry.
I've been doing the commercial side of my life, has been kicking into full steam ahead, and I've been in Heathrow and Slough quite a lot, selling my soul, and not my body, just my soul.
All right, well, good to know. You can expand on that later on in the show if you want to. But no, Harry back. Good to have him back from Africa and Dolomites. And are you here for a little while, Harry? Are you jetting off again?
Yeah, finally back on Sky until Christmas, pretty much. So it's lovely. I was out. I've been out for the last few days with workshop guests on Sky, and I actually couldn't remember the last time I'd taken a photograph on Sky. So it was actually nice to get back out, see the landscape, see how everything's changed. Get soaking wet as you do on Sky in the autumn, but yeah, lovely to be back.
I was thinking about this recently. I don't think I've taken my camera out since the summer when I was away in Spain, just because you get so into doing your work that isn't photography that the camera kind of goes back in the bag. So probably next time will be Venice when James and I are down in December. Oh no, that's not true.
We must remember our sun cream.
We must
remember, Ruth. We must remember our sun cream in Venice. Last time we were there, we got so soaking wet. Do you remember? Well, maybe that's the time before. But,
no, I remember my trousers were marginally too long, and I had a bit of a tide mark going on. But yeah, no, I've learned my lesson.
The Ruth Aqua Outer.
Freezing conditions. Moving into our news stories, the first feature of the podcast. There's been a story in, I don't think just the UK newspapers and online, but probably all over the world. Rather a random one, but it does have a photography connection. Harry, tell us what this is.
So I've had an obsession with Everest for a long, long time. I've been to that area myself. And in 1924, it's one of the greatest mysteries in mountaineering, a chap called Mallory and Irvine, two British climbers, attempted to be the first people to summit Mount Everest. Now, unfortunately, they disappeared on their descent down the mountain, and the question that is unanswered is, did they ever make it to the summit? We don't know. The evidence is stored on a little film camera that Irvine was carrying with him, but until very recently, no evidence of his remains have ever been found. Has remained one of the biggest, and it's 100 years this year since that first attempt up in 1924.
Now, the interest is the fact that this is before what we see the first attempt as being.
Yes, and then 1953 was the first successful summit of Everest in conjunction with the coronation of our lovely Queen Elizabeth, God rest her soul. But that's classed as the first official summiting because, of course, we have evidence of that. We know, and we have recollections and biographies and autobiographies and photographs. So if we were ever to find a camera from Irvine and his corpse, then that would be irrefutable proof. And we're one step closer to that with this news story this week, as a documentary team that were on the north side of Everest retracing the steps. I think, I'm not 100% sure, I assume it's part of an anniversary documentary, essentially 100 years on. A well-known American director, Jimmy Chin, was leading a Nat Geo expedition to that area. And as they were exploring round, stumbled literally across the boot and foot of supposedly Irvine. Now the boot has been removed from the glacier. They've taken samples of DNA, but in a quote from Jimmy Chin, the director himself, the foot was wearing a sock, and on the sock was written the name A.C. Andrew Comyn Irvine, I think his name actually is. Sandy Irvine is what he got known as, but it had his initials A.C. Irvine printed on the sock. But, they've gone away to do DNA testing and to check whether it's actually him. They've taken DNA from his relatives, but in his words, it's like, dude, his name's printed on the sock, man. so
I tell you, Harry, it's worth because I knew we were going to be talking about this, so I had a look, and when you see at the picture of the sock, I mean, it looks like his mum sewed in that little name tag. It's the sort of thing that you have to do for your kids when they go off to, to do PE at school.
It is terribly British.
Yeah, it's very British. And the other thing is that the couple of the pictures of him himself, and I think the last picture, it says that they were just before they left to climb in 1924. Picture of some tents lined up. Just the style, the feel, everything about those pictures, his haircut, amazing time. Exactly 100 years ago, extraordinary. And I wouldn't mind being found just as a boot one day. That would be all right, wouldn't it?
Is that your aim, James?
We can all dream. Yeah, we all hope.
But no, there's something quite romantic about it.
They haven't found the camera yet. The only part of his body that's been found is the foot. But it does offer some hope that we might find the rest of his body might just be entombed in the ice and will melt out at some point. No, imagine being responsible for developing that film. You've got one chance to not cock it up at, possibly proving an earlier summit of the world's highest mountain, and, you leave the chemicals in slightly too long or you accidentally expose it. I wouldn't want that pressure.
My advice would be to clip test it. And for those nerdy analog people, they'll know what I mean.
Marcus isn't here, so we'll have to take your word for it.
Imagining the giant rooms they got in the Ilford factory. Remember when we did the tour of the factory, and they've got these rooms that are just pitch black, and men who just work in the darkness the whole time. You'd give it to them, and it's like, right, you're not coming out until you actually get this done. Mole men, that's what they're known as. But it's a fascinating story, and you're right. It's the fact. What if you get it wrong, you've literally got one chance, and it's, history making, whatever. Highest mountain in the world, did it happen? So anybody and Harry says he's been in that area. I'm guessing, Harry, you've not been quite up as far as these guys were.
I haven't been to the north side where they are. They're on the Rongbuk Glacier, which is on the Tibet side. So I've been to the Nepalese side and explored the valleys around Everest just on a walking holiday. But I would love to summit Everest. If somebody gave me the opportunity, I would definitely do it.
You'd need a lot of energy bars. You know what you're like.
Oh, man, yeah.
A couple of 100 metres and you get a bit lightheaded, don't you?
30 kilos of tracker bars.
Well, other people who are travelling, this is another interesting news story that we have found, not remotely on the same kind of scale, but people winding up other people at airports. James, what's this one all about?
Well, it couldn't be further away, really, could it, from, climbing Everest and or looking for a 100-year-old film camera. This is a story about people photographing sort of bird's eye views. What's the actual term they call it, Ruth?
Flat lay.
Flat lay, which is basically a bird's eye view of your tray that you have to, when you have to strip semi-naked at the airport because they won't let you through because, you look dodgy. Because you look dodgy. But even the little old, lovely lady called Beryl in front of me, she looks dodgy and she has to be stripped semi-naked as well and put a belt and then everything in the tray. Well, apparently there's a big trend for laying your stuff out very neatly in the tray and then taking a bird's eye picture of it. It's a bit like pack shot photography, really, which has been around since the year dot, really. So why it's a trend, I have no idea. I mean, it's annoying enough when you're standing there having to take your belt, your hat, your glasses, your phone, your passport, everything out of your entire pockets. And then you never quite know what the rules are these days. Some airports, they shout at you, don't they? Leave your laptop in the back. Don't. And then other airports, take your laptop out your back. And the anxiety levels are quite high already. Well, apparently you couple that level of anxiety with then photographing your tray before it disappears into the, to that machine.
Or having the person in front of you be photographing their tray.
Yeah. From a bird's eye point of view. I mean, why you would then Instagram that, I have no, whatever it is you do with it, I have no idea.
I think the whole idea is that you're putting things out that you want people to see, like, here are my designer sunglasses that I'm taking away on holiday to Turkey, and here is my, Apple laptop.
What, three pieces of chewing gum left in my pocket that I've had to take out because there's this in a slightly metal foil.
That could be your version, yeah.
That's my version. Yeah, my version would be very dull, wouldn't it? 21 pence in change.
That would be more interesting. Have the side by side, the influencers' versions and the kind of the normal man's version, yeah.
The normal man?
I'm sorry. The extraordinary man.
But what happens when it comes out the other side? Because you then get that sort of anxiety, don't you? Is your tray going to come straight on, or is it going to be sidelined? Diverted and then inspected. And as photographers, often our camera bags get the diversion, don't they? They slip off.
Almost always.
They slip off to one side and then they say to you, you haven't taken all your electronic goods out. Which always amuses me when it's Marcus, because he goes, it's analog. So it's not electronic. So I don't know why this is a trend. I mean, it's about as far away from anything in the world I would do. And if somebody did it in front of me, I would probably accidentally knock them in the back of their knees and hope they crumple to the floor. But I'm not a violent person.
It's just time wasting. Like, what? It's egotistical. Why? Who else is interested in what's in your pockets at an airport? I mean...
Mind you, having said that, of this parish, Mr. Marcus McAdam photographs every single meal he ever takes, and this is not that far away.
That's true. It's maybe his next step.
It is true. So the next time I'm flying somewhere with him and he decides to photograph his tray from a bird's eye view, and what was the term again? What's it? I'm looking for it.
Flat lays.
Airport flat lay. Viral, apparently. Well, anyway, not for me, Ruth, I'm sorry.
It might be contagious.
Right, well, we're talking about vintage cameras already, but we've got a news story which is kind of a camera-related news story. Apparently, vintage camera sales are going through the roof, James, and they're blaming something in particular for this. What can you tell us about it?
Well, through the roof. I like that expression, through the roof, isn't it? It's a good one. Yeah, apparently they've gone up 1,600%, and it's all...
1,600?
What did I say? 1,600%. I beg your pardon.
That's mental.
Yeah, that's what I said. Oh, you're confusing me.
No, I just didn't know that was the number. I knew we were talking about vintage cameras, but
Do you know the most annoying thing about this news story is that I used to clearly have full film kits back in the day, and most of my Mamiya stuff, I believe, is with Marcus, which is a bit annoying. But anyway, never mind about that. And also, I've sold things, so it just goes to show, rather, that whether you should hang on to it or not. But the reason that it's going up in prices, apparently it's to do with fancy weddings. People want their fancy weddings photographed on it. So, but I think regardless of the fancy wedding thing anyway, it's on trend at the moment to buy old film cameras, and that's predominantly why the surge is there. But as I said, it does make one think as what you should hang on to, what you should trade in. I know last month you were talking about your Canon Mark IV, EOS Mark IV, which will go on to probably be a classic mirrored camera. There's no doubt about that. I mean, Leica, Bronica, Kodak, Polaroid, that's what it talks about in this article, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if Rolleicord, Rolleiflex in there as well. Hasselblad will undoubtedly be in there, so it might be time to go into the loft.
I saw a news story actually a few weeks ago, kind of linked to this, and it was a photographer who was slightly wound up that the bride at the last moment had requested that the whole wedding be shot on film, and he was asking her, why film? What is it you like about film? And she's just like, I don't know, just want it on film. So he didn't have time basically to do everything she wanted. So he did it in digital and told her it was film. He edited it slightly so it looked like film. He said she didn't know the difference and she was happy.
And she wouldn't know the difference,
No.
and most people wouldn't. By the time it's in an album or something, or however she got her final deliverables, as they call it in my commercial world.
In the biz.
In the business, deliverables, which is a horrible word. But
That's
anyway,
not an easy word to say.
It's not an easy word. She wouldn't be able to tell from her deliverables, whatever. The software will give you much the same feel, but without going down a huge rabbit warren. If I was to get married again, which you never know, if Ruth says yes one day, and I'm a lucky enough man, I would probably ask for my wedding to be shot on film, but not because it's shot on film, but because the photographer will concentrate more.
Yeah, that's true. You kind of trust that someone who's going to offer their services on film, that they kind of, they believe they know what they're doing.
Absolutely. So that would be the reason I would ask for it. But I don't know. She was clearly asking for a feel reason. Well, that can be replicated digitally.
But it's kind of trending now. There is kind of trending, and again, but the thing is, they want them on film, but they then want to be able to show them on Instagram. And I
think that reason for that skyrocketing price is yes, the Instagram thing, holding your camera. I presume you look cool holding it. I'm not sure I would look cool holding any of these old retro cameras, but I think there's a sort of underlying passion that people are unaware of. They think it's cool. They think they look good. They think the feel of film, but actually they're probably enjoying their photography more.
I think that's maybe overestimating the current younger generation.
Overestimating? That's a bit harsh.
You're a member of it, Harry, so, I do regularly overestimate your abilities.
I was just reading the article, and there's now, it's now describing generation Yers. What's this?
Oh, I saw that. I thought it was a misprint. I didn't even know what that meant.
Yeah, so did I. But so apparently, we're on to another generation, and it's just because it's viral and it's trendy. I highly doubt there's any real appreciation for the fact that something's been shot on film and the effort and the knowledge that goes into that. I think that is probably lost.
No, but I think the jeopardy side of it comes into it, and I think that might be a feeling that the Gen Zs, or what the Yers are, I have a Gen Z that's knocking around the place somewhere, and he has shot film, and there's no doubt he feels differently pressing the button to when he presses it on a digital camera.
But that's from the photographer's point of view. I understand the photographer's wanting to do it, but from the consumer point of view, they just like the look.
The receiver of the deliverables.
Yes, that one.
That one. The bride.
The bride. And the groom.
Yeah, she would never clue. She would never clue.
In general, but you never know. Anyway, those sales are skyrocketing. Marcus has obviously got a bit of a gold mine going on in his studio. All the kind of... Are they all yours then, James? The Mamias and everything? I thought they were Marcus's.
I can't actually remember, but I did give him a load of Mamiya stuff a long time ago now. So, yeah.
Well, he'll be disputing that on the next show, I reckon.
Yeah, probably.
Another story we've got in here. I know we always do kind of selfie style stories. This is slightly similar, but slightly different as well. Harry, what's this final bit of madness we've got?
Yeah, we do love a story about someone doing something stupid, and this is, well, I'm not quite sure if it's an official medical term, but certainly something that's been dubbed main character syndrome. People that obviously think they're the most important person in any situation. And it happened in Houston, Texas, where a couple wandered down a busy highway, interstate freeway, and in order to take a photo shoot, so literally in the middle of the road, busy traffic, stopped it in order to do a photograph, and there's snapshots of dash cam footage of her flicking her hair and being photographed. Can't see what the camera is that the guy is using. It's probably a phone. And I mean, it's just ludicrous. I mean, in the middle of a insanely busy road.
So, Harry, are you telling me you've never stopped the traffic in the middle of an insanely busy road to take a stupid photograph? Now, answer that carefully, bearing in mind that the viewers might get to see something towards the middle to end of next year.
I think the phrase insanely busy is incredibly subjective, so...
And a crosswalk was involved. and no laws were broken.
And I fully well know I'm not the most important person in any room. That often goes to someone else adjacent. So
how is the wife?
Yes, exactly. But, it's just another one of those, Darwin Award instances.
Do you know what really annoys me about this story is that they've stopped this highway in, I think, was it Houston?
Yes, yeah.
Anyway, it's a massive American sort of, like 3,000 lanes wide or whatever it is that they've stopped. Having looked at the article, I can't see the final picture anywhere. I actually want to see what the final picture looks like.
Yeah, I mean, if they got a good result, then...
If you've gone to all that trouble, yeah. I mean, I'd like to see it, really. And Texas as well. They're quite gunslingy state. I'm surprised nobody sort of, I don't know.
Oh, that's true, actually, yeah. I mean, it's amazing they weren't replicated for the...
Guns down, I think.
I was avoiding that phrase.
Anyway, I would like to see the final picture, that's all. But there you go, that's...
Yeah, we'll have to see if we can find it.
Yeah.
All right, final story. This is not yet in the news. It is in the Photography Online podcast news. James has performed a stunning turnaround, and he's decided that he's going to...
No. I'm thinking.
Okay. James is contemplating...
Prepare the fanfares.
Come on, James.
Well, there's this new trend, okay? Some very clever people have invented a camera that you can look through, and you don't need a mirror to see out the lens. So it's not like a rangefinder or something. No, well, the truth is, Ruth, that my DSLR system, I use... I can't even remember what I use. Harry, what do I use? 5 DSRs. I'd forgotten. I use 5 DSRs, which are the big...
This is how tech savvy you are.
Quite. Anyway, we'll come on to that in a second. So the 5 DSR is principally the big brother of your Mark IV, Ruth, okay? And pound for pound... the Mark IV and the 5 DSR in the Canon ecosystem, this is, and there are equivalents certainly in the Nikon and possibly in the Sony ecosystems, is probably the best camera ever made. Okay, digital camera, that is. So, but I've got a fear of missing out, which I think has an acronym.
FOMO.
That's incredibly trendy for you. You must have been listening to your son.
I know. Listen, I've been hanging out with a lot of young people recently. I've been down the Bowls Club. I don't know, The new ecosystem, the new Canon, I will stay within Canon. I was listening to you chatting with Marcus about swapping ecosystems for your wildlife stuff, which is predominantly frame rate and focusing for you, right? So you were thinking about turning to Sony. Well, in the last month or two, just the way that commercial work goes sometimes, I've been doing a lot more lifestyle-y stuff, basically in quite dimly lit buildings with models strolling towards one. And my eyes aren't quite up to what they used to be. And certainly focusing and the tracking system on a mirrored camera is great and it's all very well, but you still need to see clearly, really, and you need to move your focus points around and possibly focus override without going down how to do that, but that's the way I would do it traditionally. But my eyes aren't what they were, and seeing you with your, what have you got? The R5?
R5, yeah.
Yeah, the R5, and the way it focuses, because it doesn't have a mirror, which helps all the software actually focus accurately and properly and track eyes and all of that kind of thing, I thought, you know what, life would be a lot easier. Now, there's also another reason, and that is that the actuations on the 5 DSRs that I use are getting very high. I can shoot 10,000 images a week easily, and that adds up very quickly. Those bodies are getting harder and harder to find and going up in price and are now almost the same price as a brand new R5. The glass is better. I have to admit the glass is better in the new Canon series, and I presume the same is across the Nikon and Sony systems as well. The modern glass is just better. So it's getting very, very close to when I have to jump ship and go. But I freely admit I'm actually scared, and there's a couple of reasons I'm scared. One is batteries.
Oh, I'm going to enjoy it so much when he changes.
I know. Can you imagine the language?
I can.
Because I just don't want an electronic viewfinder, and anyone that takes a picture is looking other than sort of potentially still life or something, but anyone who uses any form of camera and uses the LCD on the back should just be shot, basically. When why are you holding 10 grand's worth of camera or even £1,000 worth of camera and then looking at a screen that's about 2 inches across? What are you doing?
Well, with your failing eyesight, it would probably help you. It's a big old screen on the back of most cameras.
No. What you mean, the electronic viewfinder as opposed to the LCD?
No, but the actual LCD. That's a 3-inch screen. It's a lot easier to see.
Well, I do sometimes hook it up to a monitor that's about 27 inches,
yes,
and then
what's the difference?
And then put my glasses on. But I don't. I'm worried about using the electronic viewfinder, and then I'm super paranoid about battery life. And the fact that if I change my system over, although I don't think I will, because we did have a chat the other day, didn't we? So Harry and I about this, and I was seeking counsel both spiritually and practically from Harry. And I think I'm going to end up running 2 systems. That's the truth of it. I'll run a mirrored system and a mirrorless system. So I won't be doing any trading in or any of that business. I'll just run 2 systems. And then when I need accurate focus or frame rate, I'll go to the mirrorless system. And then until the cameras die on me, I'll run a mirrored system. But I don't know. Looking through an electronic viewfinder, constantly aware that you're burning battery life. I mean, honestly.
That is where, so, you mentioned the LCD screen, and that is...
And the batteries are about 150 quid each, by the way.
They are quite expensive. But I was shooting a commercial event in Edinburgh last weekend, and it was 4 p.m. until midnight, and I was shooting an R5 with a 5D4 backup body. 5D4 just didn't have the performance and the noise. It was exceptionally dark inside. I was pushing lenses and bodies to the limit, and I've got both images side by side, and I really struggle to use the images off the 5D4. They just don't hold up as well as the mirrorless images. But on the topic of battery life, I only ate through maybe 1.5 batteries on the R5. Yeah. So as long as you're not constantly looking at that big screen on the back, that's the battery eater. The viewfinder is surprisingly efficient, I would say. I didn't notice a drop in battery life when I switched from mirrored to mirrorless. I think
it's just very uncomfortable. This is very, very uncomfortable.
We'll come back, James, next time you're on the podcast, which is probably next month if we do a bit of a Christmas special. You can let us know if you've done the transfer and how it's gone for you, okay, and how much out of pocket you are in batteries.
If I've done the transfer, there will be no decorations up in my house, no turkey, no tree.
You'll be dressed in black.
And I'll be dressed in black for sure.
If we see that the singing fish has disappeared off your wall, we'll know it's been down to the pawn shop.
It's a singing fish. Do you mind? That's not a billy bass. That's a tiger fish.
Yeah.
Caught in the last century in Zimbabwe. Don't touch the fish.
We could do it as a feature for the show, though. James's transition to the 21st century and entering a new age, and we could dress him up in hip and trendy clothing, and
he could say super a few more times. Yeah, that's for an upcoming podcast. I think we'll leave the news stories there, much as there is.
That would be super sick.
There's so much more to talk about, but we'll never get on if we don't crack on. So let's move on, I think, to our next feature.
The big question. It's a question, and it's big.
All right, well, this month's big question, are photos ever truly finished unless they're printed? Now, as usual, we put this up on our socials to get some feedback, some comments from you guys. First up from Facebook, Anthony Ward said, well, is an MP3 track ever truly a song unless it's been recorded onto vinyl? Yes, and so is a digital image. However, there's nothing like seeing one of your well-captured images printed out and displayed for all to admire, just not the same on a monitor. Michelle Warren says, I have photos I've printed that I later realised could be even better, and others that achieved what I wanted them to without ever needing to be printed. So I'd veer towards it not being that simple, much though I love prints. On Instagram, Miami D Fan 83 says, in my opinion, they are finished once they are done being edited. Liam Black Photography said, I've got loads printed that are still in tubes and envelopes from the printers. Are they finished? And I Spied Images says, I think it really depends on what your plans were for the photo when you took it. If I printed every photo I'd taken, I wouldn't need wallpaper. I'd take photos for my own enjoyment, and I think they are good enough. I post them on social media, which means far more people get to see them and enjoy them than if I just printed them off. Now, I love prints. The bigger, the better. I've always loved a really, really big print, but I also really like just seeing an image on a big screen, like a projector, an overhead projector, a very large LCD screen. So for me, at first I was thinking, yeah, prints all the way. But then I thought, no, it's just the largeness I quite enjoy. What about you guys? What's your take on this? Who wants to go first?
Well, I think that James and I probably do have a similar view on this. Now, surprisingly, given my youthfulness and good looks.
You're tender.
I started off on film, so I picked up 35mm SLR. I learned to develop my own film, and crucially, I also learned to print in the darkroom with an enlarger, washing it through all the chemicals and having a finished product at the end of the day. And it's funny, I was having this discussion with some guests just yesterday, and it probably is still some of the most enjoyment I've gotten out of the photographic process. It was that period of printing in a darkroom with an enlarger. I might have been the smell of all the chemicals. You'd come out of the darkroom after 8 hours awfully lightheaded, but then you would have something physical to hold in your hands at the end of the day, and that was intensely satisfying, knowing, especially that I'd done the process. Now that I'm on digital, I don't print as much, but I do try and select a handful, 2, 3, 5, whatever it is, images that I'm really pleased with at the end of a year, and I get them printed. And I rarely do anything with those images, but they sit in a big art folder in my office. And if I have, I was about to say friends, if I have somebody visit the house, the postman, the deliveryman, the plumber.
Oh, Harry.
Well, I had to say it before someone else did. Then I would much rather show off something physical than load images up onto my TV, for example, or bring the laptop screen out, which just isn't big enough. And I think it comes down to what you said, Ruth. It's seeing images large, but especially having something tactile. And it's also I used to do a lot of photo books as well, from just personal holidays or trips or collections of images at the end of the year. And I'm still very, very much in that vein of thought. And it's almost wording, I suppose. We asked the question, are photos, or is a photograph ever truly finished unless it's printed? And to me, the definition of a photograph is that physical item, whereas an image, that word image, that's digital. We only invented the word image really for digital. Well, it's older than that, but it's very much associated with digital files. So it's almost like a disparity in my head between what a photograph is and what an image is.
Well, I can tell you what a photograph is, Harry. It's something that's viewed by somebody. That's all it is. So it's like a piece of art. So it doesn't matter. It's just something that's produced on a camera that's viewed by somebody else. But the answer to the question is, yes, a photograph is a photograph. It doesn't have to be printed at all, even though I'm completely old school and like things to be printed. But one of the reasons I like them to be printed as opposed to displayed on a screen, a digital screen, be it a phone or a TV or a projector or a blimmin' great LCD billboard somewhere, is that once that's turned off, that device, that picture's gone for good. Whereas the chap mentioned he's got a load of pictures printed, and they're still in tubes under his bed or whatever it was he said. I think it was Liam Black. They're still pictures. And the thing about those pictures, Liam, is that people in your wake will find them and look at them in 100 years' time. So, if you lose your boot on Everest, along with your tubes of photographs, someone can find those photographs and unfurl them. Whereas if you had them on just a hard drive, even if they were permanently being displayed on a digital screen, on some god-awful picture frame that's a digital picture frame, I hate those things, but anyway, scrolling round and round, or a screensaver on your computer, whatever it might be, as soon as the power's gone, or that piece of software becomes outdated or whatever, that picture, I know in theory it's still on a hard drive somewhere, but it's gone. So a photograph or a picture is not anything until someone looks at it. So it's, we could go down the whole Schrödinger route with that. But in essence, I think when you take a picture, you have to decide, are you taking that picture for yourself, which is perfectly valid, or are you taking it for someone else, and who is that person? And once you decide that, then it becomes a photograph. And then when that person, and that person can be yourself, sees it on a daily basis, then it's a photograph. But the one thing I would add right at the end of this little mini rant is that I think in this day where the majority of pictures are stored in clouds or hard drives, that when Harry mentioned his photo books, that's really important. But even if you can't be bothered to go to the trouble of photo books, and I think they're quite straightforward these days, quite automated in many ways, then just send off a load of your pictures. Don't even worry about overly processing them and worrying about, sharpness or exposure or whatever, but just send them away and get some 6x4 prints done. They're really not that expensive, and put them in a shoebox and put them under your bed next to Liam's tubes of prints, because generations' time will look at those. And I'm not convinced in generations' time that random selection of pictures that would be in a shoebox under a bed will be looked at on a hard drive. I think only And it's not a conspiracy theory thing, but only the real sort of chosen pictures will be looked at. You know, it'll be the best ones. And it's not always the best ones that stand the test of time. They'll be the ones that survive on hard drives and passed from hard drive to hard drive. Whereas a random selection of prints in a shoebox under a bed will be passed from generation to generation. And that will mean a lot more in 100 years' time. I can't add 100 years to where we are. What would that be? 3024, is that right?
That's 1,000 years.
It's 1,000 years. Oh no.
2124.
This explains
It's
so
amazing
much.
I can figure out shutter speeds, but I can't figure out anything else in life. So I think that they will mean a lot more. And that, you know, so a little kid or whoever it is looking at pictures in 100 years' time, like us looking at that picture of the foot on Everest, you know, that just won't mean anything if it's digital.
I think you're right. There's tens of thousands per photographer on hard drives, and it's, you know, once they're gone, people who don't care that much are not going to sift through them and, you know, do anything with them. No. They will look at the ones that have been printed out. The hard drives will eventually get, I don't know, stuck in a bucket of seawater or whatever you do with them these days. But
is that what you do? Put it in a bucket of seawater?
I have heard that. I did try it. It didn't work well.
Whose computer did you try it with, Ruth? What did you do to my laptop?
Do you know it was your laptop? You did. I remember. Yeah, that's right. You gave me an old laptop and it didn't work. So I thought, I need to destroy this. I didn't know how to do it. And I was Googling it, and a bucket of seawater.
So there was hammers, there were pickaxes. Ruth went full metal jacket on it.
I think I eventually put an axe to it. But I tried the seawater first. But either way, anyway, there are lots of comments on this online. And feel free to still add your comments, your contributions to any of the social posts. They will stay up there, and we do still read those as well. Next month, we will, of course, have a brand new big question. We will let you know what that is. Keep an eye on the socials, and we'll stick it up there as well. We're going to say hello to some listeners right now. We always do this because we kind of like digging into the listener statistics and just seeing all the kind of...
And you like showing off your language skills, don't you?
My language skills, possibly. I mean, we say this every month that the UK, obviously, we got the most listeners there, so hi to everyone in the UK. The US is the second, but in the US, apparently, we did some digging. We've got listeners in every state except for 3 of them. So this is a bit of a challenge, I reckon.
Oh, really? Who?
Yeah.
Who?
Okay, so North Dakota.
There's no one in North Dakota.
There's no... Well, that's possibly true. Mississippi.
They don't have technology.
Yeah, that's the...
And Arkansas.
They don't know how to turn it on.
And it's okay, right, ignoring those guys. If you know anyone who lives in one of those states...
And what was the third one?
Arkansas.
Oh, Arkansas. Oh, they did have Bill Clinton.
Well, okay.
I'm not sure what to make of that.
Let's leave that there. But feel free, North Dakota, Mississippi, Arkansas, if you know anybody in one of those states, make them aware of our existence. Help us get all 50.
Or if you're a United States listener, take a road trip and stick it on in the car.
Your phone.
Yeah, if you're in South Dakota, just nip across the border.
So we can tick that off, and then we can have a nice even map. Easy peasy.
I like the idea of that. North Dakota, Mississippi, Arkansas, if you could help us, that would be awesome. Uzbekistan, we have got one person listening in Uzbekistan. I did try and find out how to say hello.
Is that another state?
Come on then, let's have
Okay.
another hello then.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. So, assalamu alaikum.
That's assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
It's all run together. It'd be one.
I'm not going to ask how you know that. And Ukraine, we've got one person listening in the Ukraine. So
brilliant.
Privit. I think Privit is how you say hello in the Ukraine. So if you're either of those 2 people, feel free to get in touch. We love knowing who's listening, no matter where it is from. mc2photography.com. You can get your various ways of getting in touch, or leave a comment if you want to on whatever platform you're listening on, YouTube or any of the other ones. And thank you for leaving comments as well regarding last month's podcast. And we mentioned actually last month that we were trying to beat the record for the previous month, which I think today. So obviously it's not quite a month when we're recording this, but to date they've beaten us for the first week. However, the trajectory shows that if by the end of the month, by the time we kind of come up to the end of the month,
expert calculations and projections.
Expert calculations. We anticipate that last month's show will be superior to the month before. So possibly.
In your face. Or in your ears, it's a podcast.
So we need to stop listening to last month, stop listening to last month's gibberish, and start listening to this month's sensibleness.
Yeah, we want this one to beat last month, obviously. So,
well, this is what we've done over the last couple of podcasts. Is we're now taking the best two elements, obviously, from the
yourself,
those,
Harry.
Yeah, mainly just me.
What was that term that was used for people taking pictures at the airport that you said you weren't one of?
Oh, main character syndrome. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's
there you go.
Harry, main character. John Bentley 4429 saying, really enjoyed the last podcast. First time I've listened. So the presenters are great in the way they explain things, making it easy and straightforward. I'm a newish amateur, so thank you so much. And Roger Lush, this is regarding, we were talking about mirrorless and DSLR, which one was superior, or we weren't quite saying that, but it was regarding that. He said, having gone from using a box brownie back in the 60s via film cameras, early digital, DSLRs, and now the Canon R6, I can say in all honesty, they all do the same thing on the instructions of the hands that hold them. They just manage it in slightly different ways. Progress is inevitable, but tech, for the sake of it, is the thing that's causing unrest.
So, Ruth,
yes.
Roger sounds like he's got a few years under his belt there.
Possibly.
Okay? He knows what he's up to. Mm-hmm. So if you were to say to Roger now, if they'd never invented mirrored cameras when you'd gone straight to mirrorless, if you were to say to Roger, look, hey, there's a camera and you can see live through it. No electronics needed. You can see via a mirror what's actually going on. A mirror and a prism, you can see. Can you imagine how excited he would be, Roger?
Well, Roger listens to most of these podcasts, so feel free to let us know, Roger, how excited you might be. And everyone else, we always love your feedback. Do feel free to keep it coming. We are going to move on, I think, with our next feature.
What is the point?
The point. What's the point?
All right, well, this one almost didn't make it past the Ruth kind of test for what's the point topics, but James and Harry have obviously got strong feelings on it, and I know that you guys are going to have strong feelings on their strong feelings. So apparently, what's the point for this month is Aurora Photography. And I have, yeah, exactly. I was like, what? You can't talk about that. That's
Ruth's voice went all high-pitched and she screwed her face up and made all sorts of rude expressions when I mentioned this earlier.
And then I decided, if you've got strong opinions on it, either way, then it might make a good talking point. I think there's every point in the world to Aurora Photography, but I'm going to shut up for a couple of minutes. Who wants to have their rant first? James, this was your idea, so go for it.
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with, per se, with Aurora Photography at all. You know, it's a very pretty thing, except it's not. It's more of a science than an actual photographic, representation. You're not photographing what you see, because everyone, with long exposures or tons of post-processing, or is it called night mode on the iPhone or whatever it is, then you get all these amazing colours and swirly things and stuff that you're not actually seeing when you're there. No, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's not a representative form. I stood out I live on, as you know, on Dartmoor, and you guys live in Aurora Land as well, two very dark places. And you get all these people saying, oh, it's mind blown. Once in a lifetime. Oh, stupid emojis and stupid comments, and I trekked and I stayed up till 3:15 exactly a.m. To what? To photograph something that, you might as well have just photoshopped it, because it's not what you saw. And it is pretty and it is an amazing phenomenon, and I'm not getting away from that.
It's certainly worth seeing, and experiencing, but I think experiencing is the word. I
think it's better in video, to be honest. Shock horror from a person who shot stills 35 years, that I actually prefer it in video. It looks better in video than stills.
My understanding was, I didn't think you could do it in video. I thought you had to basically do lots of time-lapsing.
With the same principle. So I prefer a moving image of the aurora. So I just think, and I've seen it so many times now, and it's the same things, and it's not a once-in-a-lifetime thing. It's just not. So please stop telling me it is.
Do you not think it's the fact, James, you're getting wound up because it's social media. You're seeing it all the time from other people who have not seen it before.
That is, absolutely, that's true.
But the joy of doing Aurora Photography, it is amazing. You do it and you go, wow, look at those colours.
The joy of doing Aurora Photography is the same joy as when I do photography, say, in a studio with using flash with people, and they can't see what's actually going to happen until you press the button and all the flashes go off. and you're producing something that you can't see with the naked eye.
A lot of the time I've taken people out for Astro photography and we've shot something like the Aurora and we see very little to the eye and we press the button, you wait for 20 seconds and then on the back of the camera and then everyone goes, ooh, wow, look at that, look at the picture.
And it is good, but...
And it is good, but it's funny, I didn't think I was going to agree with James, but, we've had a couple of really good displays on Sky the last few weeks and I haven't gone out for any of them. And partly we've had crap weather, but also there was a couple that was visible and I was a little bit tired or, I was making excuses, but I was finding it very difficult to motivate myself to want to go and photograph.
So if you had gone out, what would you have done anyway? You'd have taken a picture,
I don't know, yeah. So the thing is, I have a couple of images of the Aurora that I'm really happy with interesting, iconic subjects here on Sky.
So I was with you. I think it was with you on Isle of Lewis with the Callanish stones.
Yes, yeah.
And we shot that, and it is great, and it is a great experience. And the customers were, it's an amazing to see. But that was more an experience for most of those customers who it was their first time shooting the Aurora, and I get it for the first time. So I'm not against shooting it for the first time. It's the second, third, fourth, fifth time. But really, Ruth, you hit the nail on the head when you said it's about social media and the load of absolute tosh that's written on it about, as I said, just please stop telling me it's once in a lifetime. How many lifetimes have I got? I'm like a cat. I've had 9 lifetimes in the last month.
So take them, but keep them to yourself, basically, because it's the kind of thing, the danger I see in it quite often is people will see a faint display, take an image, it looks amazing, everyone else sees that, and then everyone sees an actual display which is faint, and they go, oh, there's no such thing as a bright Aurora.
Is that it?
Yeah.
And that's actually not the case. You can get really bright, colourful auroras to the naked eye. And I see so many people who now believe that auroras are always faint and you only get colour in an image. And so they brush aside the whole experience now. Whereas that's actually not the case.
Yeah, precisely. And it is about the experience. It's exactly about the experience. That's what it is. I mean, I remember very specifically being with Marcus doing the eclipse in Yellowstone. And it was actually just outside Yellowstone. I don't know how many years ago that was now. And the experience was amazing, and the eclipse is amazing, and the birds stop singing, and it gets colder, and you can actually feel from the other photographers a slightly different sensation as people feel all sorts of different emotions. If that happened all the time, then it would be really, really boring. And the auroras are happening all the time. So, and an eclipse picture is boring, by the way. It's just a picture of a blocked out sun.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a boring subject matter. There's some technical stuff, but great. So all the pictures I see of Aurora are either, as I said earlier, people flexing their muscles about staying up late. Congratulations, you're not 12 anymore. Walking a long distance in the cold. Congratulations, you've got a big coat. Or technical photography. Congratulations, you can expose for about 20 seconds on a relatively stable tripod. Well done.
Right, this is why James is not allowed onto our kind of private Facebook page where people post pictures of auroras, things like that. It's going to upset too many people. It is fun to do. I think it's the
fun.
Consensus. It's fun to do, it's fun to experience, fun to see, but overexposure, I guess, of... a proliferation of images on Facebook and Instagram it ruins it.
Of very, very similar images as well.
But next time it happens, go and do it, folks, because it might just be a once in a lifetime opportunity. Remember that.
Yeah.
And your mind will be blown. Your mind will be blown. Remember your emojis.
If you would like to put a few emojis on comments, either mind blown or getting wound up at James and or Harry, feel free again to stick that on our socials in the comments, whatever you like, and we will have another What's the Point in our December podcast. We're going to move on to our final feature of the show and have a wee look at some more stuff.
Does the world really need this?
Right, so we've been complaining already about LCD screens and all the rest of it. There is a brand new, very expensive camera on the market, which has decided to do away with it. But it is digital, James. What have we got?
Which one are we talking about, Ruth? I've gone off piece.
The Leica M1D.
Thank you very much. I'll just bring up the right tab. No, so the Leica M1D. Now, the thing about this camera is, Ruth, that I've done tons and tons of research, and it looks cool. Everyone loves a Leica. They are quite fiddly to use, as you personally know yourself, because you've used them a few times. Harry is has used Leicas on quite a few occasions as well.
I'm a new convert to them. I have to say.
You're a new convert, but they are fiddly to use. So it's a bit like an Aston Martin. They're not easy to drive. They're a bit faffy, but they are nice in the hands. But the thing about this one, Ruth, is it doesn't have a red dot on the top.
Ooh.
Okay. It just has the name Leica scrolled. And I'm not sure whether I like it or not. So I think for 8,100 of your Great British pounds, which are the same in Scotland, and it's probably the same in dollars by now as well, because our current hopeless government, they're all hopeless, you don't get a red dot. And I'm very disappointed about that, because I think for £8,000, I want a red dot on my camera so that everyone knows that I'm holding a Leica. But there is a way around this. There is a way around this, because I was passing WH Smith's the other day, and they sell little packets of stickers. WH Smith's to our foreign visitors is like, I don't know, a crappy Walmart or something for those in America. And they sell little packets of small red stickers. So you could just go and buy one of those, pop it on the Leica, and then I reckon that M series would be worth £8,100. But it is a beautiful looking thing. And would I? Yes, I want one. Can I have one?
It's amazingly expensive considering it doesn't have a screen. What I like is that, of course, there's no LCD screen, but what you can do is you just link it to your phone with the Leica app. I mean, it never works as well as it should, but you're meant to be able to then use your phone to control it. So instead, you just use your phone as a...
That's just taking away from all Leica-ness ever.
Yeah, I mean, it is a beautiful thing. I think if you're looking at spending that amount of money on something that's a Leica, it's, the money's not an issue. And Leica, it's a luxury brand. They're lovely. They're well crafted. They are beautiful to use, and it's more for the experience of using one than for the fact that it's just another camera. But I mean, would I spend that amount of money on one? No. But
so if you got one, Harry, so answer me this then. So if Leica ring us after this and say, Harry, we would like to give you a Leica, I've now lost what it's called, anyway, the M1D, would you keep it or eBay it and declare it to the tax man as a gift?
Well, that would never happen. No, I would keep it.
Would you? And how often in a year do you reckon you'd take a picture on it?
I would actually use it quite regularly. I mean, I was one of the trips we were running in the Dolomites this year was on behalf of a Leica Miami franchise store. We're running workshops, and so everybody had a Leica. Everybody had 4 Leicas around their necks. And anyway, I borrowed one from another one of the guides, a little Leica Q2, just with a 28mm fixed lens, and I actually left my Canon R5 in the bag for pretty much the entire week, and I just went around and I snapped using that for a week. But it was really a nice experience to use, and I would use one as a little holiday snapper, and I would take it to family events, and I would use it day to day, because I can't be asked to get out the big Canon and change a lens and put it on and fiddle around, whereas that slots in a pocket, and these do, and that I think there is a bit of value in something like that. But the value, whether the value is $8,000, $9,000, I don't know, but that's for you to decide.
I mean, odds are if you're buying the M1D, you've probably already got one with a dot, James. So it's not going to be your first and only Leica camera, so you wouldn't be suffering. So does the world need it, guys? Oh,
definitely. The world needs beautiful things. I was brought into existence, as was the M1D.
Yeah, we all make mistakes.
All right, well, moving on to...
Well, you're a twin, just like to point that out.
That's a mistake.
So you've only got half the DNA you should have.
Our next item, Harry, what have you got?
So we've got latest SD cards from SanDisk, and they are, I'm going to use quotation marks, the toughest SD cards we've ever seen. And they are supposedly waterproof, shockproof, drop-proof, X-ray proof, heat and freeze proof.
Oh, are they X-ray proof? Is that a thing? I didn't actually read that bit.
Yeah, supposedly. I mean, to be honest...
Is that a thing, though? Do you need it to be X-ray proof?
No, I mean, it's not film negatives.
It's magnetism that's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't whack it in an MRI or anything, but so I don't... I mean, maybe it is. And I guess if you're dealing with high doses of X-rays, but we've all flown with our equipment and SD cards, and I've never experienced an issue. But yeah, these are SanDisk cards. So, everybody knows SanDisk. They're a reputable brand. And really, the question is, do we need them to be tough? I mean, how many SD cards have you dropped out of your pocket onto the floor and then thought, oh no, it's not shockproof, and then broken an SD card?
Well, however long I've been shooting digitally, I've had 2 memory cards fail. One was a physical failure, which is where on the bottom of an SD card there's some funny little fiddly bits of plasticky stuff, the little metal prong things. And one of those, which was my fault, just jamming it against something, and that broke it. So that was a failure. And I had a CF card that just died once. So, and bearing in mind that those cards, both CF and SD, go in and out of cameras, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 times a week over however many years I've had them. It's a long time. That it's not a thing. So, and they're used in pretty extreme conditions sometimes. So I don't think it does any harm. But does the world really need it? Well, it's kind of a bit of a moot point, really, I think.
You don't want one then, James? Harry?
I don't need it.
To be honest, they're not particularly expensive. They're not that much more than ordinary SD cards. So, if somebody says, do you want one that's waterproof to 1 metre or one that's not, maybe I'll take the one that's...
You're more likely just shoot everything on 2 different memory cards and keep them separately, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah, it's not going to change the way I work at all.
It's not going to stop you losing it either, which is the key thing that most people do. They lose it.
There's no point to me. I don't see why we need them.
All right, well, let's move on to the next item, because this is something that's quite interesting. We've been talking Pentax, obviously, on the main Photography Online show over the last couple of months. They are kind of slightly trend-setting in a way, in that they've released a brand new film camera recently. And we've also been talking, obviously, last month about the death or possible death of the DSLR. Pentax has kind of screamed round a corner and they've released a brand new 61 megapixel DSLR, which is completely unexpected. Who wants to talk about this? James?
Okie dokie. I can mention that it has, as you just said, 61 megapixels. It's got a thing called an Astro tracer built in and GPS. So the Astro tracer, those Aurora fans can get their hands on that as well, and they can photograph the Milky Way behind the Aurora. And we can see, as well as Aurora photographs, lots more Milky Way photographs as well, which is always a delight. But I think more to the point, as you mentioned, they kind of slightly snuck up on us there, as we were discussing, or you guys were discussing in last month's podcast, the death of DSLR. I think that it's not important what this camera is, actually. What's important, as an individual camera, what's important is the principle that, and I know Pentax is, not one of the big 3, but still they are producing a mirrored camera, and I don't know if it will make the final cut, but I was making a slight aside that if someone invented a mirrored camera now, having lived in a world of mirrorless cameras, people would be like, this is groundbreaking ingenious. So all power to Pentax for keeping it going. It looks like quite a beast. I like the look of it. It looks like a good old-fashioned DSLR body, even a sort of old 35mm film body in some ways. It's quite a chunky looking thing. It's not the ergomatics of what it looks like. It looks like it would be good to grip and hold. And so, yeah, just the principle of them hanging on in there is the most important thing about this camera, not what it actually does.
Harry?
I think it looks pretty good, actually, as SLRs go. 60 megapixels, great resolution. I mean, that's going to keep all the pixel peepers and the megapixel warriors happy. But, it quotes. I can't find any information on its, the autofocus or the burst rate, other than it says very fast. So, what that means in comparison to current mirrorless cameras, I don't know,
Well, it can't be the same as mirrorless, so it can't.
No, it'll be limited. But, if they can keep up in some regard with some of that technology, the Astro trace technology does look pretty cool, being able to shift the sensor in relation to the stars. It's one of those essentially gimmicks, but I think cameras almost need something like that now in order to make them saleable. So whether it ticks the box of do we still need this, I don't know. Do we still need SLRs? We've argued that point, but it's quite nice to see that technology carry on and still have some relevance in the industry.
I know you were talking about it a little bit last month, but and we're not privy to what it costs in terms of R&D and continuing development of two different systems and things. But broadly speaking, it is a shame that the major manufacturers can't just keep running mirrored and mirrorless systems, because there are huge advantages to mirrored cameras in just terms of actual feel and taking pictures. There just are, and there is no getting away from that. My little worry about changing from mirrored to mirrorless at the beginning of this show. This camera shows that there must be a bit of a market for it, and it is just a shame that we can't, that the other manufacturers are slowly phasing out mirrored cameras, because it's just a better way of taking a picture. Seeing something live is just better.
Do we have a price on this, Harry?
I can't find any information whatsoever. So, I mean, I do remember them having some announcement of this camera. It must have been this time last year.
Oh, really?
Not any specs, but just saying that a successor would be coming to the previous model, but that because of component shortages, I guess it's like buying an old car. I mean, I've got a Land Rover. It's now difficult to find parts for it. It's going to be the same for SLRs.
What do you call it, Harry? What do you call your Land Rover?
My Disco.
Your Landy.
My Landy.
Your Landy.
Yeah.
Oh, your Disco.
Disco, baby.
And what colour is it, Harry?
It's a beautiful, rich red wine red.
It's orange, verging on pink.
Yeah, it's claret. Yeah.
Cherry pink.
It's cherry pink.
But so actually getting components to make these cameras is going to be more difficult, because nobody's making stuff for SLRs. It's all going to be shifted to the mirrorless market. So I guess it is similar to owning an old vehicle. So maybe that is going to really delay and influence the market and even the number of cameras that they can produce. So we'll just have to wait for further info on that.
All right, so does the world need it? Not entirely sure.
The world needs the principle.
All righty. All right, well, moving on to something else, a little bit different we have found, and I was just saying to the guys earlier, I'm not entirely sure if this is new or not. I don't think it actually is, but it's a bit interesting. It's a photo lid for your Osprey rucksack. So explain to us, Harry, what this is, because it's an unusual one.
Yeah, so obviously for those that are just listening, it's almost like a hip or a waist pack, or if you're in America, a fanny pack that is more specifically designed for cameras, but being Osprey, it is designed to fit over the top of your rucksack and sit on the top and then clip into all the existing buckles. So it means you've got quick access to some certain photography gear while you're out hiking and using a more traditional hiking rucksack, but you can still have some photography gear along with you. And it's the sort of thing that I really love. I love bags, and I love almost stuff that you really don't need. But I've been suffering with a bad back recently, and I haven't been using my photography rucksacks, and I have gone back to a rucksack with a proper sort of hiking harness, because it helps my back. And this is the sort of thing that I would buy and I would use, because it would make it easier to store stuff in my...
But the weight's all in the wrong place. The weight's too high. The weight should be at the bottom. So it's a flawed design.
But I'm not going to load it up with a 300mm f2.8. I'm just going to chuck one camera in there. And
he's going to put his little Leica in there.
It's a flawed design. It's also 115 quid.
Is it?
And it's also now in my Amazon basket by accident.
I mean, Osprey do actually do similar things that don't sit on top of the bag, but the same kind of idea. Ones you can put inside. But I know what you mean about the camera backpacks in general. They haven't thought them through as well as perhaps some of the rucksack hikers.
Well, I don't know. There are certain brands that have. There are certain companies that have. Mindshift being one, for example. So, or brands.
Well, true. In general, though, it's interesting. There's lots of interesting things like that, and be able to just have a wee cube and either shove it inside or on the top.
The key thing with bags and gear transport is, because it's very easy to become bag obsessed, is just experiment and try and find what you like, really. But the weight distribution's wrong on this. I'm sorry to say it's wrong. It's up high. I'm
just imagining when you go to take the lid off your rucksack and it just slams to the ground, because it's got the massive weight on top of it. All right, well, not entirely sure the world needs that, although James does have it in his Amazon basket. The final item we have got, though, for this month. Harry, what is it?
It is a new pancake lens, which I always get excited at when I see it, and so I realise we're still on camera equipment because it makes me hungry. No, it is a new lens by Viltrox. So it's a 28mm pancake lens, and I think the major selling point is I don't know if it's the world's thinnest or world's smallest, but certainly exceptionally thin lens. Can't remember how thin it is. I think it's maybe just 15.
It's about a centimetre or something.
15 millimetres, something crazy.
Are they calling it the chip lens in America? Or chip for us crisps, because it's so thin, I believe they're calling it the chip lens.
Yeah, it's very thin anyway, half an inch or something width.
Yeah, so you wouldn't even know that it was on the front of the camera. You know, it'd be the sort of thing I'd put on and then you wouldn't actually realise you've clipped it on. And 28mm is quite almost an odd focal length, but I have used a few 28mm lens recently, and it's quite a nice focal length between, you know, something you would consider wide angle and the more standard. I know James's favourite is something like 35mm, and this just borders that sort of focal length to something wider. And I mean, obviously it's aimed at somebody that's probably doing more travel or street photography, trying to be conspicuous about it and not be noticed, and it's going to fulfill that job. I mean, it's just a tiny little thing.
I think the only decent, because it's at f4.5 is its widest aperture, so I mean, if you're doing street photography or something, I'm not sure that this possibly would be the lens. I mean, in their blurb they talk about it being unobtrusive. Well, yes, it is unobtrusive, but there'll be a bloody great photographer holding it, so that's not that unobtrusive. So I don't think it makes any difference whether it's a small normal sized non-pancake lens or a pancake lens, but I'm not sure I'd want to trade in the f4.5. That's I don't know, a bit slow for me personally. The 28mm thing, I kind of agree with what you were saying there. That's not bad. It's a lot better than 24, which is often people's default, and they'd be better off shooting at 35 always, nearly without exception. Otherwise you just end up with lots of pavement in people's pictures. So 28mm is going in the right direction.
If you're doing a lot of general snapping and, you know, almost travel photography and landscapes, then
I just think why would you? I mean, I do sort of agree.
f4.5 isn't a problem, is it? I guess if you're trying to do shallow depth of field portraits, then
that's not a problem. There is one thing, though. There is one thing that does make it. Was two things that sell it, really. Let's forget about the fact I think it's now only available on Sony for now. But anyway, it's $100.
Yeah,
which is 100 Great British pounds, and it is so small that it can almost act as a body cap in your bag. So it is like carrying around a free lens. So from that perspective, you know, when I used to walk around with a 400mm 2.8, for example, doing sort of wildlife-y type stuff, and then
which you need a wheelbarrow for.
What mine? No, I've got strong shoulders. I don't have, you know, because I've eaten my proper, and I'm a normal-sized human now. So I just carry it over my shoulder. My 400 2.8. I would, funnily enough, keep the Canon is it a 40mm pancake? I have that downstairs somewhere. I don't think I've ever used it.
There is a 40mm, yeah.
Yeah, so I used to carry that around. It just, I don't know, in case, is a rainbow hitting a unicorn, or, I don't know, some Aurora comes out or something. So, you know, that's why I would carry that lens around, because it was so small and so unobtrusive that you just didn't notice you had it in your pocket. And that is where this Viltrox lens comes into its own. I suspect you would very rarely ever take a picture on it, but keep it as a spare, keep it as a backup.
For $100, the cost, you know, the cost per image that you'd end up taking,
you can't go wrong,
is almost well worth the economy.
Marcus and I bought a 40mm pancake lens for filming the show a couple of years ago, just thinking, oh great, lightweight, it's not bad focal length, and we've never used it.
Yeah, you never used it. Yeah, that was the lens, Harry, that we were filming with, that pancake lens that was driving me bonkers, by the way.
Oh yeah, that was a bit annoying.
Yes.
So good in principle, but does the world need it? Not entirely sure. That's the Viltrox pancake lens. So there will be links, of course, to all of the items, all the gear items we've mentioned in the show notes, as well as the news stories we did at the beginning of the podcast. But we're about done, I reckon, for today. Normally this is the time where we tell you what's coming up on the next YouTube show, but as you'll know if you're a regular viewer and or listener of the podcast, we've only got one more coming up between now and Christmas. Hopefully it's coming up pretty soon. Could even be out by the time that this comes out, but keep an eye on our YouTube channel, on our socials, that's Facebook and Instagram. Have a wee look for Photography Online YouTube on both of those, and we'll let you know what's coming up there. But we're going to leave you now. Thank you, James and Harry, and possibly the guys will be back. We'll see what we'll do for our Christmas special for December. But until then, take good care, and most of all, take good photos.
The Photography Online Podcast.